I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook baby.
What?
Just made like a noise like when you
Oh,
hit
I
the
said,
record.
"Burp."
Well, okay. How are you, my friend?
Doing all right, my friend. How about you, my friend?
I'm fine, my friend.
Good. That's good to hear, my friend.
Not your guy, Chief.
Yeah, so lots of stupidity. I haven't seen much in the Cleopatra.
We're gonna take a week off from that.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, but we are continuing our coverage of the writer's strike.
You want to start with that?
Yeah, let's dive into that. So this is in
Fun.
Variety.
Mm-hmm.
This is the trans takeover of the writer's strike in Hollywood, and it's pretty funny. So recently, a bunch of trans people in the entertainment industry, in the film and TV world, are they're I wouldn't necessarily say hijacking, but they kind of are. They're really trying to take over the writer's strike thing. So we were talking about the how identity politics was actually kind of leaking into what we think are pretty reasonable demands, but now it's it's turning this whole movement really stupid and unreasonable. So I'll read you a quote from this is from Variety. Hollywood put us on a pedestal and then kind of abandoned us, frankly. If you want to stand with us, you need to stand with us. You can't just put us in a few TV shows and then when things get hard and when people are paying attention, stop greenlighting our projects. You have to commit to us as a community and show that you really care about our dignity, our lives, and our economic vitality. So right off the bat, like there's like the super entitled.
Yeah, it's similar to what we talked about last week. I forget specifically what it was, but it's this like idea of step aside, it's our turn now, which is like really dumb and not how business works. Also, again, the next paragraph is so and so emphasize that representation matters when trans stories are told in mainstream media, and it's like again, I can't think of a minority that is more overly represented in media right now. It's like in everything. Like I just saw a North Face commercial with like a trans person skipping around and it's like a pride thing. And it's like, why can't they just have like two gay people and dressed in North Face clothes, like doing something normal? Like it feels like a sideshow, and I feel like it's really offensive to like the vast majority of gay and bi and lesbian. Like it's very strange to me. And again, it's like, well, representation. It's like every show now has like some sort of non-binary, or every show that like is for a certain demographic that's not on like cable TV or some prestige shows, but like many shows go out of their way to try and check every box. When it's like, no, like the vast majority of groups of friends and families, like these people aren't in them.
Right.
So it's like the opposite. Like it's overly represented actually.
And it is. And the stories suck too most of the time. Like
it's just like, oh, here, like this is the trans point of view. And it's like and I think what they're saying here is because these streaming platforms, they cut a lot of this stuff because it wasn't selling. Like it's not what people want to watch,
right?
Or not all the time, or like they don't want it in your face all the time. Like this is a show like the trans voice or the non-binary. It's like, no, like you could just have those characters in these shows and just have them be like anyone else and like just like and not make such a big deal about it. And it's the like self-aggrandizement of these populations in these shows that people were turned off from, and it's a business. So then that's what they're saying here. It's like, well, you cut and run what did they say exactly? You can just put in a few TV shows, and then when things get hard and when people are paying attention, stop greenlighting our projects. Like it's a fucking business.
Yeah.
Like stop greenlighting the project. Why are you entitled to your project?
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, this is, and we're very pro art here, of course. That's like this whole podcast, but there's a business side to this, and you're not putting on like a show at a black box theater in the Lower East Side. Like you're trying to get a show on Netflix or Hulu or something, which already has so many. Like you watch Hulu, it is the crit streaming platform. I watch Hulu. Like I watch Hulu a lot.
Yeah,
like I like it. That's some of my favorite shows. It's like one of my go-tos. Like every commercial, every like show, like everything they promote, it's either like that was my literal name last time, an exploitative Hulu documentary. So it's like some woman who was exploited in the 90s and now is telling her story, or it's like a show about like Black voices or trans voices or something like that. And yeah, that's on your splash screen, but people are skipping it to go watch, something that they actually like. Well, it's telling you something.
Right.
Like, and you can only do so much of that. There's only so much space for making a statement. It's like they have to keep eyes on the screen, like anything these days.
Right. And also, it always cracks me up that the people who complain the most about privilege are the ones who themselves are often the most privileged. It's like you're complaining about not being seen, about your show not getting picked up for a second season by Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's like that's like, I don't know. It's like, well, then go start, a web series. You just go start, something on YouTube or something. It's like, don't demand.
Just go make something good. Like go make something that people actually want to watch.
Right.
And then they won't care about the identity politics of it. They'll just enjoy the show. And if you can do that by including whatever demographic you want, like that's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like really not, I don't want to say it's not hard to do, but it's like the goal isn't hard. Like that's not a hard goal. It might not be easy to achieve, but people have been doing it. But it's like, honestly, it's an easier time than ever to do it.
No.
Like you tried doing that in the 80s, like it was like a big deal when they had like 3 Black characters in a room on like some law show. I remember, I forget which one it was. It wasn't Boston Legal, I don't think, but it was like one of those. They had like 3 Black lawyers and a judge or something. It was like a huge deal. Oh my God, like that'd never been shown before.
Right.
Or something like that. It's like, now you can do that. You can do whatever you want.
Right.
Just make it good. Like,
yeah. Getting back to the business side of things, I read an article sometime last week, I think, and it was talking about how Hulu and Disney Plus were axing numerous shows. From what I understand, they were just shows that just weren't, like the ratings weren't high enough. It has, as far as I can tell, it had nothing really to do with identity politics. But I saw a bunch of writers who were working on these shows going on Twitter and complaining. One of the writers said, they're talking about how unfair it was that the show that they worked on only lasted for 1 season, and that they didn't get a chance to develop. And it's like, but nobody watched. Like, I'm sorry, like maybe it was a good show, but it's like nobody watched it. Like, don't be like, hey, you got to give us 3 seasons and let people, slowly let people. It's like, each series costs tens of millions of dollars. If the numbers aren't adding up for the studio, it's like, don't just expect the studio to give into your demands.
I know. It's like, this isn't, like I said, this isn't community theater or something. Like you have to be able to sell it.
Right.
And honestly, like I just said, it's now, at least nominally, there are the most trans and non-binary people, like viewers. So if you can't do it now, you can't do it. Like it's if it's true that people just want to see themselves represented on screen, which I do think is ridiculous. But if that's the case, like now should be a better time than ever.
And it's only going to get easier too.
Yeah. Like that's their argument. That's what they say. Or it's like, first of all, I don't think that there are this many. They say young people who are trans and non-binary. I think the vast majority of that is just nominal. Some of it's very much true. First of all, I don't know what non-binary is. That's not a thing. It's just a way to make straight people feel special.
Right.
But like, and I think they're definitely like legitimate trans youth, but like a lot of them are not. It's just statistically impossible. It's just not true. And so that's fine. But okay, so even nominally, like, then why aren't your show selling? Like
Right.
these aren't like cable watching you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like these are this is a demographic that's ripe for Netflix and Hulu and whatever Peacock, whatever else they're watching, and your show still can't make it. Like it's probably just a trash show.
yeah, yeah.
This is probably not very funny or interesting or dramatic, like any of that.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood loves to chase successful trends. So it's like that's why we have so many fucking superhero movies. But it seems like even though like LGBTQIA plus shows, like while we
Yeah.
even though we have so many of them and so many of them still aren't bringing in numbers, it's like but like they're Hollywood is still making a bunch of content around this subject, and it's like it's still not selling. So it's like no matter what, like it's like I can guarantee you that the vast majority of those shows are being pushed by like some 27-year-old screenwriter who's just like we need more content, diversity content.
Yeah, well, that's the next part of this is that why these takeovers happen, and this happened with crap, what was it, the Wall Street, what was the Wall Street takeover again?
Occupy,
Occupy Wall Street. Like that's such a good movement behind it. It had like people from all different walks of life, all different parts of the political spectrum. And then of course the identity politics creeps in, and those people are usually the loudest and the most intimidating, and especially when then you have the armor of that identity, like in this case like trans, like very very few people are going to speak up against it and say like not even against it, not even be like I'm against you, but like this isn't good for solidarity, like this is like a small part, like this is why I'm so pro union and labor and so against identity politics, because of shit like this. Especially like this isn't like this, I'm sorry, like this isn't the most sympathetic group either, and I am a writer, but it's like I'm sorry, like trans writers for Netflix like are not the most sympathetic group. These aren't like trans sex workers who are put at disproportionate threats of violence. Like I'm sorry, but like even then, solidarity, and it's like you're just gonna fracture. Like this is not going to bring people together. What brings people together is fighting for higher wages, more paid time off, more sick leave, better hours, hybrid work environments. All of that. Not like my type isn't represented enough. Like that's not ever good for any sort of like solidarity movement.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, and because it's so funny that they claim to be in favor of inclusion, yet so much of their messaging is so it's so exclusionary. It's like why we have enough white people up on screen, we need more. It's like you're not going to bring that many people onto your side, other than like if
you're telling by saying that, you're basically saying like I want you to lose your job.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't want you to be able to write your stories because you are this race or this gender. It's like that's the opposite of solidarity.
Yeah. Whereas if you focus on the actual bringing about of better working conditions for everybody, regardless of identity, and it's like this benefits everybody. Like
I mean it's the saying is a rising tide.
Floats all boats or whatever or something like
that. But that was whatever floats your boat. A rising tide raises all ships or something, or well, whatever that. I don't think I'm saying it right, but like it's that concept. Like it benefits everyone, which then benefits your demographic. And if you're going to look at it as like, well, my demographic, like your demographic has to be negatively impacted to make mine better, like you have something wrong with you. Like that's exclusionary.
I saved this quote from a while back. This is from Eric Hoffer, who I believe was a philosopher. It's every great cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket.
I mean, that I could see that.
And I think we're kind of seeing that here.
Well, it's so unfortunate, and it's really shitty, and it always devolves into this because everyone needs to get their piece, and when you and the trans group is like the newest thing that you can't criticize from that side, like from your own. You can't be like, guys, like this isn't, or right there. Folks, this like isn't good for us. We need to like stay together. We need to focus on the bread and butter issues, like why we're striking. Like we're not going on strike and giving up so much to have more trans voices, and or, like that's just not, they wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
So this is really just like antithetical to the whole point of these sorts of movements.
Yeah.
And I mean, if any, I mean, I could have predicted this.
No, yeah.
Like, I could have told you this. I'm honestly surprised it didn't happen sooner.
Yeah.
But it always devolves into this. It's the same thing with like even the Black Lives Matter, that could have been inclusive and been like, police violence is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And actually white people are also subject to police violence more,
yeah.
Well, that's because there's a lot more of us, but like, so it's not like it's not like they could have included that, and I think some try to could have been like, no, this is about police violence against unarmed people, against citizens. This could have been a state versus the people thing. Like that would have been a smart thing to do. It would have gotten way more like libertarians and even conservatives on your side. Like this is unacceptable. But no, it turned into like carrying a raised fist through the streets of Minneapolis and making white suburban women like apologize and have these struggle sessions. Like it always devolves into that because those people are the most aggressive.
And the leaders of Black Lives Matter, like they're fucking millionaires now, and they're buying mansions and shit.
They're fraudsters.
I think we talked about it this was like a year ago, but there was one where a leader, a BLM leader, was being interviewed, and she bought like a $2 million mansion or something, and then somebody asked, "Oh, like so, do you use that mansion to help like house people who are struggling?" She goes, "Well, I mean, I've got a few friends, who sometimes stay there, or sometimes someone needs a little bit of money. It's like millions of dollars, and that's not going to schools or anything."
Dude, I could have fucking told you that, man. If it was like it was so obvious. It was so obvious that they were just a bunch of fraudsters and just so full of it. They're doing like commercials with Uggs and stuff, and like the most corporate BS. You have Amazon and weapons manufacturers and like banks and all of this stuff, like putting like, you knew that this was not going to be any sort of movement that actually helped like the average person at all. And it was so transparent, and I'm glad that people lost money giving it to these groups because it shows how stupid you are. Like you really want to help someone, go like and if you want to make it racial, like go help pay someone's rent, go buy them groceries, go like help out, go babysit their kids so they can go to work. Like don't give it to these multinational organizations that of course going to pocket like the vast majority of it.
It's funny how they act as like sort of corporate, like really corrupt corporations, and even like mixed with like the mafia. It's just like the worst groups imaginable. But anyway, going on with the identity politics in this, there's another quote here. You would never have a white showrunner create a black show without black writers and then hire a token black person and say, "Hey, can you give us the green light on this black story?" Why are cisgender showrunners doing that to trans and non-binary writers? We have the right to tell our own stories.
To be honest, that probably has happened, by the way. A white showrunner creating a black show and hiring like that definitely has happened. I don't know if that happened recently. But why are cisgender showrunners doing that to trans and non-binary writers? I mean, they're not doing a good job either, I guess. Like,
this is more of that sort of stay in your laneism. It's like, if you're not trans, don't tell trans stories. Is that what they're basically trying to say?
Yeah, I think that's 100% what they're trying to say. It's beyond stupid. I don't know. Are there? I mean, like, what is a trans show? Like, what is?
I don't know.
I don't know any, and I mean, I feel like they would come up.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to increase trans representation in pop culture, you should make it very easy for studios to do that. But instead, like, they have like all like this whole like list of terrorist demands where it's like we like the main character has to be trans, the writers have to be trans, the director and the showrunner have to be trans. And it's like, okay, well then that just makes our job harder.
Then trans what? Like, does it have to be like a trans man writing, like a trans man write a show for a trans woman?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't like trans. Like there's diversity in that. And then what about white trans women? Can they write for black trans women?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it just gets whittled down. That's why I always say we're getting to the point where it's like a character from a certain city has to be like of the writers and the director have to be like and the actor have to be like from that neighborhood of that city, or it's not authentic enough.
Yeah,
and like that's where we're gonna get, and it's just gonna be an untenable situation to like create any sort of art.
Yeah. As a student, I'm like, well then fuck this. Like, let's just go. Like, we got an A-lister ready to go for the show. Let's just go for that. Like,
yeah.
Oh God, we don't have a trans or non-binary Will and Grace. We're not in sitcoms. We have yet to have a truly trans movie star. We want to write those roles for those people. This is a civil rights movement of our generation.
Wait, so they want a trans Will and Grace?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so is there argument that like we can write it, but you won't put it on? Is that kind of what they're saying?
I think that's what they're trying to say. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, I think if someone wrote a trans Will and Grace, they would 100% give it a shot.
Yeah.
And then it either works or doesn't. Yeah, I know Will and Grace was pretty, like that was a very big deal.
Yeah.
When that happened, because it was like the first gay, like
openly gay, like living together couple or something, or.
Well, I thought Will and Grace. I thought she was a straight woman, and
I'm sorry,
a gay man.
I'm thinking of the different one with Deborah Messing. What's that one with the
Deborah Messing?
Anyway, where there's two gay guys and there's two women. They're all friends.
Yeah.
Anyway,
is that not Will and Grace?
Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, anyway, but yeah, that was. I know it was a pretty groundbreaking show because it's portrayal of his open portrayal of gay dudes in the gay community. So. I guess that's what they want. It's like, hey, this is young, annoying trans people.
Well, life. I think Will and Grace came out at a different time where it was like there were only so many channels and so many shows, and people would just kind of watch it because it was on. I think, and like now there's so much variety that I don't know if people are going to flock to this just like the trans show.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, you telling me there are no trans characters in Euphoria or non-binary? I haven't seen it, but I can't imagine that there wouldn't be.
I'm pretty sure there's a
I think there would have to be. Yeah. In Shameless, there's a whole. Have you watched Shameless? You ever seen it?
No, but that's the Chicago one, right?
Yeah, and I loved that. That show was so good. Like that was honestly my favorite show for a little. Then it kind of went downhill, and then I think it came back with a season or two that I thought were good, and then it just by the end it was pretty crappy. I don't even know if I finished the series actually. I think Fiona even left. Like Emmy Rossum's character even left. But there's this character Ian who's like just a gay white dude. He's like an art. He wants to join the army, and he does, and he is just like a kind of like he's like banging the neighborhood bully who of course is gay, but he's like a dick to everyone. And then he like joins some group to help at-risk youth, I guess you would call it. And there's this scene that honestly, it feels like satire. And I thought it was satire, but the writer said it's not, where it's like he's going around and it's like, and like the character who's introducing him to all the other characters, like he is a trans boy. And it's like they go around the table. It's like, this is so-and-so. His pronouns are this and this. Yeah. This is so-and-so. He is this. Her pronoun, and like the pronouns and everything, and they do it like 10 different people, and he's like, oh, I'm Ian, I'm a gay guy, and it's like he's like the bland one, and it's like, oh my god, like is this actually what young people do now? And I think that's true. Like it's like everyone has to out pronoun each other,
right?
And it like becomes, I mean, if you couldn't, like if people were intimidated to talk to each other in person, a few years ago, imagine now. And this actually came out a few years ago, but or maybe more than that. But I remember watching, I'm like, is this a joke?
Right.
Like,
right.
do people expect you to remember their pronouns that are not like I've said, like trans is different. Like you transition from a he to a she, from she to a he.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like
Yeah.
that's easy. Oh, you're now a man. You use the men pronouns, the male pronouns, like
Right.
all this other shit that it's just made up.
Yeah.
It's fantasy land. It's like LARPing.
Yeah.
It's like when my friends and I would dress as knights and elves and orcs and shit,
Yeah.
and like say what made up distant lands we come from.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what this isn't real, and
Right,
the fact that it's tolerated is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I think these are just made up words. These aren't like legitimate trans people who transition from one thing or the other. This is just made up nonsense to make you feel special. It's the latest thing, and
Yeah.
youth has been doing it forever. It's always been a thing.
So when you said that the writer said that it was not intended to be satirized, so like what was the intention of that? Was it sort of like, hey, like I'm just trying to like propagate this idea that it's cool to it's a good idea to share your pronouns as well?
Well, I don't remember exactly. I just remember the writer saying like, no, that was totally serious. But I think I bet the show was criticized for not showing, even though they showed like full on men on men gay sex, they like didn't show enough and they showed like they had lesbian couples, like they didn't have enough LGBT like alphabet representation outside of like what the vast majority of people know as gay and lesbian and stuff. And they probably wrote this in as like there's this whole and I think it's fine like to include like at-risk youth and I understand that that like gay and trans youth are more at risk because there's less acceptance and and sometimes they come from conservative families. Like I do understand all of that and they flock to cities, but like a lot of this is not legitimate. Like it's just made up.
Yeah.
And that is where it seems like a fantasy land. And I think that's because no one wants to just be the straight guy or the straight white girl or even the gay, now even like the gay guy or whatever. Like that's not cool enough anymore.
I almost want to like lump in gay with like straight white man is like like that's like the most bland thing you can possibly be, and like that's where like I want to start lumping in gays with that. Oh, like he's the straight gay guy, the straight gay white guy. Where it's like gay has become so like common and accepted, where it's like that's not diverse enough, that's not edgy and progressive enough anymore.
Well that's that's crazy to me, and it's and it's the same concept, and they talk about Chappelle at the end of this. It's like and that's why I think you see a lot. Like I think a lot more gay people, just like gay men and gay and lesbian women, are like leaving liberal thought and the Democratic Party, because it's like for the most part, like LGBT stuff is mostly accepted on the right now. And in Republicans, like I think a majority of Republicans support gay marriage. There's not nearly as much of that. Like they won. Like if there's a movement that won, it is like gay equality. It is so like if anything, it's now like gay people making like a cake seller, like make a cake for them just to sue him because he won't do it. Like now it's kind of reversed. I'm not saying I'm not saying that gay people aren't at risk and there aren't groups that want to kill. Like I know that, but in terms of a movement that won, like they won in terms of both legally and in terms of like acceptance, like broad acceptance. And I've always said because their messaging, when they switch the messaging to equality, family values, like we want to take care of each other, we want to raise children, like we want to get rid of honestly this image of just like partying and fucking and disease and all of
promiscuity
that, like,
and all that.
Promiscuity. Like we want, like, no, we're just like you. We want to pay too much for our houses and get dental insurance and raise children and all that, and it fucking worked. Like that's what works, not like crazy drag story hour shit. Like that's the kind of stuff that works, because that's what most people are. Like, there's normal people who might like have something different than the mainstream, but like no, we want the same things. And that's what won. And now a lot of people are seeing that, okay, I'm pretty much accepted on that. In fact, I'm less accepted on the left now. Because I'm not like totally supportive of like trans men or trans women and like women's prisons or something like that. So now I'm the bad guy for that, even though I spent 40 years of my life like advocating for gay rights. Like now I'm the bad guy. Like that's insane. And a lot of people are turned off by that, rightfully so. And they're going to the other side.
And bisexuals have pretty bad too, because like from what I understand before, like gay marriage was like like finalized and everything. Like,
Yeah.
I met bis who were like, yeah, it sucks being bi because like you're seen as like a traitor, like you're not like it's sort of like pick a side. But also I think bisexuality is clashing with transness because it implies that there are only two genders. It's like, oh, I'm trying to both.
Yes.
So it's just like
I know, and I don't know how they. I don't. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't conflict with trans. Like it's not that.
Well, the non-binary, the whole
non-binary shit. Like, yeah, all this other stuff. Like that's what now. And now you can even tell because that like language is so important, and you have to follow the language because if you notice, liberal gay people, like people who are gay and on that like progressive side, a lot of them don't even use gay anymore. They use queer.
Yeah.
And like language matters, and these are shibboleths that show like, are you one of us or not? And that's one of the new ones that I'm noticing is that gay people don't even say gay anymore; they're saying queer. In fact, I probably say gay more than the gay people do. and gay has changed its terms over the year, like what it like changed its definition over the years. But like that's something that I've definitely noticed. You kind of watch the language trail and what camps are using it. But getting back to the Showtime, or not the show, to the Shameless, which is on Showtime. Like I was shocked when I was shocked when I saw that scene. I was shocked when I read that, like, oh no, that's like totally normal. And I think it's the same thing when you watch like a Stanford University, like, I don't know, town hall or something, and like everyone gets up and gives their pronouns and they do a land acknowledgement. Like, dude, I've seen like the craziest shit, like these land acknowledgements and like pronouncing and all of that. And it's and I want to know, like do people actually try and like use these made up pronouns? Well, like if I tell you my pronouns are like fair, like are you gonna actually use them? I can't imagine. And someone has to, like, people have to start pushing back against it. It's like, no, that's not language. Like, that's not real. You made that up. You made that up because it feels nice. And I get that impulse when you're like 14. I understand that. It feels good to be different in some ways. In fact, it's almost like it used to be like the teens felt weird for being different. And now it's like celebrated. In fact, they try and become so different that gives them a cachet.
This is a nice segue actually into the rest of the variety thing. So like I'll just read this part here. It sometimes feels like they give us just enough work so that they can pat themselves on the back and feel good about having diversity, but never actually let our shows get to air. There's a lot of trans and non-binary youth today. They are future audiences, and we want to give those audiences proof that gender can be a realm of expression, of play, of creativity, and of joy rather than fear and loathing. So I want to touch on the diversity thing. It was like, like anybody who didn't buy into this diversity inclusion crap could tell you, companies are like they're gonna like it's gonna be like the most sort of superficial hand wavy, like, okay, look, see, we hired a non-binary person, there we go, see, we're diverse, see. It's like anybody could have told you that's what's gonna happen. And I like how they're getting frustrated that that's happening. It's like, yeah, this is all because of you. This is all the stupid bullshit that you've been putting forth.
And well, that's part of it. And I think I think DEI is going by the wayside. I do think, because like now, I shared on Twitter, and I don't know if you saw it, where there are companies now that are hiring groups to basically fix, like hiring groups to fix the problems that their DEI coordinators created. It's kind of like a Chloe Valdery. Do you know?
Theory of Enchantment.
I feel like it's kind of like her. It's like I feel like they groups bring her in when their DEI like fucked everything up. Because it's true, because it just like made people who never had any issues with each other like all of a sudden have issues with each other and create a more hostile workspace, which then like to be honest, I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to a lot of workplace stuff. And if it was just that, I don't think companies would care. But when it comes to like lawsuits, if like it opens up to lawsuits because now the environments are more hostile, like that's a problem, and they actually take action to fix those problems. And that is where they're like hiring these. I don't know. I forgot what they're called. I'll look that up. But it's like basically they're like a cleanup crew. For like you pay these DI coordinators $120,000. They fuck everything up, and then you have this crew come in to probably also paying $120,000, but at least it's like in the right direction.
Yeah. That's funny. It's so funny, the
Yeah.
cleanup crews.
And it's also so foreseeable. Like, it's
Yeah.
so foreseeable that this was going to happen. Like, DEI does not work. It only causes problems.
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah.
does not get, because people are genuinely good. Like, people or like genuinely just like want to do their job, pay their mortgage or their rent, spend time with their friends and family. Like, they're not constantly thinking about their role as an oppressor in the world. Like, it's just and it's violent, honestly, to make them do that.
Yeah,
Like, that is like mental violence to make them constantly be like thinking about these things. And the people on the other side, the so-called oppressed class, like, they're not constantly thinking about how they're oppressed. And some of them take huge offense to the fact that you're like characterizing that as oppressed. They're like working their ass off in their underpaid job to make ends meet. Like, they don't feel oppressed. If anything, the fucking management's oppressing them by not paying them enough, or not like approving their PTO. That's oppressive, not their white neighbor or like their straight neighbor office who they actually like hang out with and grab a drink with after work.
I think I read a study a while ago that said that one of the sectors that experiences the fewest complaints of racism was the military, because it's like when you're busy as hell and you're working your ass off and you have a goal that's so much bigger than you and requires teamwork, it's like you don't have time to be racist.
Yeah, and and the guy next to you like is like literally could save your life at any moment.
Yeah.
Could like it's, I mean, that's not all the military. There are chefs in the military and truck drivers, but that's a legit brotherhood. That doesn't matter. You could get guys from like rural Minnesota or from Newark, New Jersey, or from like the suburbs of LA, and they come together and they're going and they're all being oppressors against brown people in the Middle East, and they do that together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the American way. I'm kidding. I was just at a bachelor party this past weekend. My friend was there who's a Marine, and he's very. We actually agree on a lot, to be honest. Like, we had a whole. It's like I'm like I was about to say his name. I won't say it. I was like, I'll just make up a name. Jim. Why the fuck were we in Afghanistan for 20 years? He's like, dude, don't even get me started. And anyway, but the military, I could totally see that. Like, they don't give a shit. It's like, we're in this together. We have to keep each other alive. We have each other's backs. Like, and the military is super diverse.
Yeah.
And actually, it's if anything, it's kind of that, like, as like a left-wing labor guy, it's kind of that, like, the vast majority are from lower middle class to poor backgrounds, but multiracial, multi-ethnic, and like, that's really the goal. That's what the goal should be. It's the kind of like shit lib, like, Democrat side that makes it like corporate identitarian. Like, it doesn't matter. It's all about like how many degrees you have and how much you make, but we put a banner up, or we put X amount of minorities on the board, but we still fuck all the other minorities in the city.
Have you seen Full Metal Jacket?
Of course, one of my favorite movies.
It's so great. But like when Arlie Ermey's given his drill instructor speech, the very first one, and like, obviously I'm not going to say the racial slurs, but he goes, I don't care if you're a bleep or blah 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 blah. Yeah. To me, you're all worthless pieces of shit. And
yes. There's actually there's this football coach. I think he was. Fuck, I can't remember his name, but he was in the SEC. I think he was the coach for Auburn. He's like an old Southern guy, and he's talking about like growing up in the South and how his dad is like, my dad, he had a not a plantation, like they had they were poor, they were like poor farmers, and he's like, we had white farmers, we had black farmers. My dad wasn't racist, he treated us all the same, like shit. Like,
but I'm sure that contributes too, where it's like, a white guy and a black guy. It's like, well, we're on equal footing now because we're both pieces of shit compared to that's what the drill instructor said. So, and like coming from the North and you come from like the Pacific Coast, like I feel like we get this idea of like, oh my God, the South is so racist. Like, it's just always like, actually the South, like there's obviously still some racism there and some like deep racism in some parts, but like there's a lot of different racism in like the Northeast that's totally different. But it's like because we didn't have like literal slavery as nearly as long, or we didn't have the same kind of chattel slavery. Like, no, dude, like down there, especially in a lot of the poor areas, like poor white Baptists and poor black Baptists, like they get along really well. Yeah.
And meanwhile, like you could be from a rich suburb like where I live, and it's like, oh, you have the signs in front of your house, but if a certain family moves in next door or whatever, or if you're like your property values change, or you know someone has a certain type of car or something, like they're calling the police.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Andrew Yang, I think it was when he was on a podcast with John McWhorter, and they were kind of talking about the sort of stereotype that blue collar whites were more racist. And Andrew Yang pointed out, and I know he was being, probably being a little like, facetious, but I think he had kind of a good point. He goes, yeah, most like, working class, like, guys in construction and truck drive, like they're too, like most of these guys work multiple jobs. They're too busy to be racist.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just kind of like, yeah, this is like the idea that,
and also,
it's just kind of,
and also I was talking to one of my friends this past weekend, again, a different one, who's like I think he's come around on some of this stuff, but
yeah,
like he's very much like a social justice guy.
Yeah.
And we were talking like Stavros Halkias.
Yeah.
It's like he lives in Queens, and it's like Queens is, I think, the most diverse place in the country, maybe that or Jersey City. And it's like you hear the N-word a lot, and it's not coming from white people. And it's like, there's a lot of racism. It's like Indians on Asians and Asians on black people and Latinos. And it's like, we have this idea that it's like all white racism again, and all the other races are together. It's like not a fucking chance, man. Like some of the most overt racism I've seen has come from black people against Asians, and I'm sure it goes the other way too in some places. Like I've literally seen, I've walked on the subway and I've seen, I watched a black guy, clearly mentally ill, but yelling at an Asian woman to go back to where she came from. And she was like, I'm going down to Chinatown. Like no, she didn't say that, but or like guys, like I've literally watched a guy, I don't know what race he was. This was like during the mask time. He was probably, I think he was like Latino, maybe white, but I'm pretty sure he's Latino. And he was just like going like ching chong, like doing the eye shit to just an Asian guy minding his own fucking business. Just like walking down the, I'm like, holy fucking, and this is New York City, man. This isn't Mississippi. Like this isn't Louisiana. It's like, and people don't realize like the most overt racist shit I see is not like white people on black people. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, man. But I want to bring up this part right here in the Variety article. We all came into this industry because we're storytellers and we have a breadth of human experience, and we're often just reduced to that one aspect of our identity when there's so much more that we can do. It's like, fuck you. You're the one reducing yourselves to one specific identity. You're the one saying, I'm a trans writer and we need more trans characters. It's like, you're the one who's putting yourself in that box.
And it's the most like banal, boring shit when it's like our identity can be like whatever. I exited out of it already. Whatever adjectives they use, like it, but it's like no, it's not. Like just to be a thing doesn't make it, like unless you're a Martian or something, or like it's not just interesting to be a thing. Like what is it? Like what's the story? What's the drama? What's the like heart? Like why am I going to care about this? Like are they good people? Are they bad people? Is it jealousy? Is it greed? Is it wrath? Like what are we looking at here? That's not just the most superficial shit. Like why? Like that's not going to get me to tune in. It's just like, oh, there are these people on screen. Everyone's on screen now. Like there's every type of person on screen in some capacity. Like that's not interesting, and it's really scary to me as like an artist to see that. Like just to see, like I don't think like what made like for instance like blaxploitation interesting, or like black movies. It was like interesting to see different types of stories being told from like in like neighborhoods or areas like people didn't, like the vast majority of people in this country didn't see. Like that was interesting. Like do you just want to make trans friends? Like I guess maybe that'll play if there's like a group of 6 trans late 20 somethings in Manhattan. Like okay, maybe do those groups of friends exist? Like I don't know.
And also like the problems between the two are completely different. So it's like like blaxploitation movies, they often dealt with like actual social problems. So it would deal with like police brutality and shit. But like, if they were to make a trans friend, it's like, like, it's just them sitting around complaining about being misgendered. It's like that. What a stupid idea.
I know, like that's what I'm saying, and I feel like that's what it is. It's like, oh, this trans person at Morgan Stanley or something. It's like, oh, like that doesn't sound very interesting to me. Like, I don't know. Or is it about like, oh, the violence? Like, is it like trans sex workers who were put it? Like, okay, that's pretty interesting,
right?
Like that could be a story. That could be something like dramatic. Like just, but that's not what they say at all. It's not like, oh, the plight of like. It's like, no, it's just, well, this can be fun. It's like, how?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're not going to focus on actual oppressed trans people. It's not like being trans in the Middle East or something. It's like
because these writers aren't those oppressed trans people. Like
exactly,
they're not and that's always my counter, and that's always like the good left wing counter to this shit where it's like we need like black writers to tell these stories. It's like, wait, do you need black writers who went to Columbia and Vassar to write these stories about inner city Baltimore? Or how about writers from inner city Baltimore who didn't go to those schools? Like that's, and then they don't have a response to that. It's like, was this trans? Like, I'm sure maybe there's a trans writer who was once a sex worker who had this talent. Who like, love to hear that story. That would be a great story. But it's like, no, these are like just, I'm assuming, I'm making broad assumptions here, like probably highly educated trans people from the upper middle class who are going to tell the same stories. And if anything, tell the stories that they're not entitled to tell because they haven't lived those lives. And I think it's pretty, I think the people, the characters and the subjects who they're writing the stories of would probably be pretty offended to be like, whoa. We're both trans, but that's all we have in common. Like that's all we have in common, pal. Like I live this way and you live that way, and you don't get to tell my story. And that's what and I think actually that's a much more, I think, accurate critique of like storytelling, not just like, oh, we have this skin color, we have sex with this type of person. It's like, well, what are you telling a story? Like, I want to hear, I would like to hear if someone was a police officer and they're writing like, they would tell a more authentic story that way. If someone was a gangbanger, like they would tell a more authentic story. Like if someone was like Sopranos consulted with real mafiosos to write their stories, because in the beginning of The Sopranos, Tony is wearing shorts during a barbecue, and apparently, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who wrote The Sopranos, they got calls saying like a mob boss would never wear shorts. That would not happen. Right, and I don't know how that might be apocryphal, but still, like that's the point. Is like, okay, you guys are a bunch of Italian American actors writing about mafiosos. Like, do you have experience like with these communities?
Right. And see, well, the thing there too is that like, being a gangster isn't something that you're like born with. Like, so it's like that. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. somebody on Twitter is the funniest Twitter exchange I've ever seen. One of them, it was some guy was complaining about like mafia culture being sort of like popularized and being kind of, is like I'm so sick of people like non-Italians, trying to act like they're in the dressing like a gangster in mafia. It's like my culture is not your. Is not your style or something. And then somebody just goes, I cook it to pizza. And he goes, see, I'm so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of you people, man. Oh man.
Well, the best was what were we? It was I just listened to a podcast on The Godfather, and it was like one of the heads of the real mafia like created the Italian American Defamation League or something to stop I'm not doing this justice, but like basically he was doing exactly what like they said they weren't doing, like to say that they're like not mafioso, but like they are.
They go into detail in that Godfather show, The Offer. I think it's on Showtime.
No, I wasn't watching that. I was watching I listened to this movie podcast, and they were talking about it. But
oh, hey, real quick, speaking of The Godfather, so my roommate actually he was shooting a documentary, and they got to shoot some stuff at a famous Beverly Hills mansion where they shot part of The Godfather. Like, so the bedroom scene where he wakes up and there's a horse head like in his bed. Yeah. So they actually got to go into that room and
oh, that's cool.
So, yeah.
I heard in this show, I'll just say the name. It's called Unspooled. It's Paul Scheer and fuck, I feel bad if I'm forgetting her name. I'm sorry. So it's one of those shows that I found. I start from the beginning, and they're doing all the AFI 100 or whatever, and they're going randomly.
Yeah.
So they're doing like, I'm not listening to every episode because I haven't seen all the movies, but
Yeah.
they've done like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Godfather, Ben-Hur, all like basically all these great movies. And the Godfather episode was this one, and apparently that scene, the actor didn't know there's going to be a horse head. So that was like pretty legit reaction.
Yeah, he didn't know it was gonna be real, right? Like didn't they tell him that it was gonna be fake or something? But they couldn't.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, he definitely didn't know it's gonna be real. I don't know if he knew it was gonna be a horse head or a fake horse head, and they actually killed a fucking horse or something for it, which I'm not cool with. But but anyway, yeah, so I thought that was very interesting. But the part about the Italian Anti-Defamation League, it's like the guy saying we're not all mobsters, and like he was actually a mobster. Like I think that
and they had to make a deal with the production of The Godfather to say like you can't say mafia in the movie or something. You can't say mafia and Cosa Nostra, I think.
Yeah, Cosa Nostra. The Cosa Nostra is this thing of ours. But they actually bombed the gates of Paramount or something like that.
Really?
Was that in the documentary? Don't quote me on that, but they like the mafia was not happy about this, which I think is pretty dumb because like it made them look really cool. Yeah, and people love mafia shit, and that's spawned like mafia movies have been around for a while. Yeah, but that was like arguably the best movie ever made. Like I don't think it is, but I know a lot of people. If you polled like 1,000 just random Americans and said, what's the best movie ever made? Like, what do you think it would like? I'm sure half would say The Godfather.
Oh yeah.
Like at least just because it's like one of the smart things to say.
Well, Francis Ford Coppola said that mafia movies up until then, for the most part, they cast Jewish actors as Italians, and it's like super like
take issue with that.
Yeah, and they had like really exaggerated. They all talk like this, so it's like really
hey, see? Hey, I'll get you.
But no, you're right. Like that was a movie that was like no, like there's it's a rich, complex culture. It's and explore like the family and religion and how all this stuff ties in. It wasn't just like
it's not that complex. They're all a bunch of goons.
Oh man, but it is interesting like that they he saw a need like in the late 70s or no early 70s rather to create an organization to defend Italians.
It's a fucking lie. That's the most that's the most Italian thing ever to like take offense to something, like to say that we're not, and then just to be totally doing it. That's so typical.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sorry, but it's like when Jewish people complain about like we don't control all the banks and movie studios and all the money in there. It's like, yeah, but you do. Like, it's okay. Like you should be proud of that. Yeah. Like, I hate that we control everything and we pull all the strings. Like I don't know. I think it's pretty cool, man. Like you should be proud of that shit. Yeah, you guys are a tiny, tiny population, and you have a lot of power. That those are goals. Like hashtag goals.
Oh man. Yeah. Want to talk classical music?
Do I?
Yeah.
Of course I do. I listen to classical. I listen to a good amount of classical music. I was listening to Wagner, which canceled.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's been so funny.
Does Wagner Flight of the Valkyries?
Yeah.
Or is it Ride of the? That's one of my favorites. That's so goddamn good.
Oh yeah.
I'm listening to. Is it Lohengrin? Lohengrin.
Lohengrin. Something.
Yeah,
like that.
I'm listening to some of that. I like that one too.
No.
Well, this is not any of that. So what's this, Joe?
So this is from Heather McDonald, who I generally like. She is a journalist, and she's been pushing back against woke stuff pretty harshly for the last for quite a while now. So most of the article, she's recounting incidents from the last few years, which I'm surprised I didn't hear about, because I've heard of some other incidents around this about like the sort of woke attack on classical music. I remember there was one article that came out a few years ago that was about how Mozart is the symbol of the white patriarchy. And so I read the article.
Like he was a child.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was God, the arguments are so fucking dumb. So I don't remember specifically around that, but I think part of it was like how when you go to a contemporary classical concert, and it's like they usually have a variety. So they'll have some composers from a few hundred years ago, and they might have like 20th century or even 21st century composers. And so when they have old composers, they'll just have their last names. Whereas newer composers, they'll have like their full names. And for some reason, they tied that to like bigotry, because there were female composers named Mozart. It's like, yeah, but nobody gives a shit about 9-year-old Mozart's sister. It's like, nobody gives a shit about 9-year-old Mozart. She didn't contribute anything. So like, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
That's their argument.
Yeah.
Mozart was his last name.
Yeah. So it's like, but
Okay.
of the family of Mozarts, because there were some female Mozarts who were composers as well, but they didn't contribute anything that was memorable.
There's a lot of Michael Jacksons out there too.
Exactly. Yeah,
like we're referring to one.
Yeah, right. I was like, well, what about Cher? Like,
and then what about Prince? What about Seal? What about
exactly?
What a dumb argument.
And Schumann. So someone would say, "Oh, I was listening to Schumann the other day," or "I went to a Schumann concert." It's like,
which one, Joe?
Yeah, I know exactly. It's like Clara Schumann. What have I heard? It's like, like she had some good works, but like they were not as important. They were not as influential.
Oh, you mean the adjunct professor at Duluth University?
Yeah, exactly.
She's gender studies.
And because most of the
Abigail Schumann.
So when you refer to a composer, one of the great composers by their last name, it's like 99% of the time it was a white dude. It's like, yeah, but it was Europe. So
yeah, it was 400 fucking years ago.
Right. So
women didn't have, they were property. They didn't have rights. What do you want us to do about it? Like, Jesus.
Maybe in the future, when we look back on more, enlightened times of today, it's like, okay, yeah, like, there was a female composer whose work will be remembered, and because she was the first one of that last name who contributed so much work to, the canon of Western classical music, we'll refer to her by her last name because we will all know who it is. But it's like, yeah, I'm sorry. It's like up until 1900 or so, when you refer to a composer by their last name, it's like, we all know who it is.
Isn't there a show right now on Hulu, speaking of which, that's about like a black composer and like back in the day, not like a current one?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard about this.
I don't know if they're just doing a stupid race swap thing, which I can't stand, or if it's actually about like a black composer whose story wasn't told because he was black. Like, those are the stories we should be telling now.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. I want more of that. I'm like, holy shit, there was this black composer in Austria who was like who wasn't like given a chance, and he was really talented because of what he looked like. No, like, those are stories we should be telling, but I don't know if that's the case, or if they just like, or they just made something up, fine, whatever, or if they just did a race swap. I honestly don't know, but that's definitely a thing right now on Hulu because I've seen the commercials.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Joseph Boulogne Chevalier de Saint George. He was,
maybe he's French.
Yeah, but I think he was a Creole free man of color. He's the earliest European composer of African descent.
Cool.
Awesome. That's cool.
Like,
that's cool.
Like that's the kind of shit that, like, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because his story is he real? Is that a
yeah, he's real.
Okay.
He was he was contemporary, so he was in the late classical era. He was from 1745 to 1799.
Yeah.
France. That's actually interesting. So
yeah, like Alexander Dumas, people don't realize he was black.
Yeah.
Like, he wrote, and I mean, if you told, I fucking bet you, if you were like, if you tried to bring into like if you were a professor of, let's say, like Western literature or something of the, I don't know, let's say 18th century, don't quote me on that, and you were like, we're going to read the Three Musketeers, we're going to read the Count of Monte Cristo, and we're going to read the Man in the Iron Mask. I think that was him.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there would be calls for like colonization or whatever. And we have to decolonize. It's like Alexander Dumas, like, that author was black. Yeah, that's actually a joke.
Idiot.
That's actually a joke in Django Unchained.
Django Unchained. That's right.
Yeah, like, and also like, who was it? Was Pushkin black? What? No, was he black? I think Alexander Pushkin was black. Like I think he was like part Ethiopian, and he was. I might be wrong on that. Let me say. and he's like one of the godfathers of Russian literature, which has like a robust literary scene. Russian literature is one of the best. Like if you could describe any like the best European literature to any country, like Russia's up there. And I think maybe I'm totally wrong about this though. Okay, don't quote me on this. I might be totally wrong, but I could have swore he was some sort of not white.
It's
anyway,
great content.
This is bad. Yeah, it's bad content. Well, no, this is really bothering me now. Okay, I'll look it up later.
But yeah, yeah, this show actually looks interesting.
Yeah, like that's very. Oh, right here. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Hold on. Because we spent so much time on this. Pushkin's great grandfather was Abram Petrovich Ganibal, an African page kidnapped to Constantinople as a gift to the Ottoman Sultan. People forget Ottomans had a huge slave trade, and later transferred to Russia as a gift for Peter the Great. So yeah, he's like a quarter black or something, or an eighth black. Like, yeah. Anyway,
that's interesting.
Glad we got to the bottom of that.
Yeah. But yeah, getting back to the classical music thing. So in this article on Spiked Online called "The Cancellation of Classical Music," we don't have to go through all the cases because they're all pretty similar, but they're all like, a professor, a college professor, or someone in the music community, doing something that slightly offends one person, and it leads to a petition and accusations of racism, and that person losing their job because of some stupid, dumb, trivial, non-bigoted thing.
This is a good example of it always comes for you. I feel like we were saying that a lot more when we first started this show, because there's a lot of that going on. But here, so real, like Donna Vaughn was this is Manhattan School of Music? Is that a high school?
I don't think so.
Or is that a college?
I think it's a college.
Okay, so obviously it's in Manhattan. It's up in Morningside Heights. She was committed to championing minority musicians. She endowed a scholarship for them at her alma mater, Brevard College, North Carolina. She was obviously not any sort of like white supremacist, and went out of her way to be inclusive, to try and get minorities into the arts and music, especially. And of course, lots of, as we know, tons of art is, that's the most overly represented place for minority musicians, but and actors and everything. But like this is this is like elite status type stuff. Like this is the Manhattan School of Music. So, and of course she was canceled and fired for basically baseless attacks concerning her allegedly racist operetta, or for producing an allegedly racist operetta, Das Land der Lachen, The Land of Smiles, several years earlier. The sin here being it was allegedly racist against Asians. And then that created, long story short, it created a petition, and some faceless, on a Zoom meeting, some faceless person asked a question that I think Vaughn maybe like dismissed real easily, which probably it sounded like it had nothing to do with what the Zoom meeting was about. Because like I said, this was put on years ago, and that created a petition, which then garnered lots of signatures because people love to just be a part of a cancellation. They get they get off on it, and then of course the school is spineless and doesn't come to her aid. Except some people do, especially some like black musicians who worked with her. Again, this was racism against Asians apparently, but it always kind of devolves into the black and white binary in this country. And she lost her job, and it's fucking insane to me. And it's like I think you kind of have to start seeing the writing on the wall in these areas, like in New York Cities and the LAs and San Francisco's. Like it's not even that. Like we can talk about another one. It's the University of North Texas. Yeah, that's like in Denton, Texas, north of Dallas, and like this shit is happening. Yeah. But I mean, do you want to add anything to that? It's very typical. Like it's a very typical sort of cancellation.
Yeah, one example I do want to shine a spotlight on, which I thought was fucking ridiculous, is about Schenkerian analysis.
Oh, it's another one. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
music
North
college.
Texas one.
That's okay. So there's this guy, the scholar who was a former editor of the Journal of Schenkerian Studies, and so somebody wrote, here it is. No, hold on. Or he was trying to connect so Schenker was a composer and music theorist who came up with an interesting way of analyzing music. Like that's it. It's just how to analyze classical music, right?
Yeah.
Some woke dipshit scholar was like, the way here it is. The white racial frame of Schenkerian analysis has kept blacks from becoming music theorists. He argued that Schenker's ranking of notes and harmonies within a composition is merely a stand-in for a white supremacist ranking of the racists. It's like,
that's
how
so like,
the fuck do you extrapolate white supremacy from notes?
That's so like anti-intelligent. I don't know what else to call it. It's just making shit up.
Yeah.
And then because you have race on your side and like you can just say whatever you want and then expect to not be the subject of criticism. And of course, then, it stands to reason that he
so much of this
back.
Reminds me of like when you're young and you're in school and you have to give like a book report or something and you didn't prepare, so you're just making shit up on the spot. So you're just like, yeah, so Schenkerian analysis on its face is about analyzing music, but it's really about oppression and power dynamics within a white supremacist society. It's like, but somehow like these people are making tons of money doing this shit. Just like I'll give them credit for being creative, for tying white supremacy into music, into Schenkerian analysis. But like
can I read this paragraph? It's very funny.
Yeah.
Oh wait, is it Heather McDonald who read? So a hierarchy of keys and of harmonies within those keys is constitutive of Western tonal music. It has nothing to do with alleged racial hierarchy. Ewell's position, that's the woke shithead, like you said, means that tonal music is itself racist. Every composer writing in a tonal idiom, including composers of color, would be engaged in a racist enterprise. So would be anyone in any field of activity that recognizes dominant and subdominant elements, whether art, analysis, chemistry, or engineering. Distinctions between gravitational, nuclear, and electromagnetic forces would render our very universe a site of cosmic racism. Of course, the rhetorical slippery slope holds no fear for you all. There can never be too many examples of white supremacy. That's a really good paragraph.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And then, of course, it's like Ewell's denunciations of Schenker as a proto-Nazi. Ewell had failed to mention Schenker's outside status as an Austrian Jew or his widow's death in a concentration camp. Like, fucking imagine that your wife was murdered in a concentration camp. And you're like in the cosmos, right? You're like watching this, and you're this guy, you're this composer Schenker, and you have this jerk off talking about how you're racist. And it's like, I was the most oppressed person in modern history. I was a Jew in Central Europe. My wife was killed in a concentration camp. And you're saying I'm white supremacist? What the fuck is happening? Like, what happened? It makes no goddamn sense.
Oh my god. No, but
I'm sorry, but like, how is this guy in any position of like intellectual power? I'm sorry, like, this person should not be taken seriously. And not only that, he should be mocked publicly.
Yeah.
He should be pilloried and mocked publicly for these kind of takes. And instead, he's probably paid like 6 figures to live in the most expensive city in America. Wait, this is actually North Texas. So forget, I was getting confused with the New York thing. But it's like, he is considered a like intellectual in our country.
Yeah. This is hilarious, man. Again, it's like when we were kids, we would have gotten a well-deserved F if we'd have presented this in class. Like 15 years ago, like, racial hierarchy appears in classical music analysis. And it's like
you didn't do your homework.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, but yeah, this is very much a sort of yeah, it's like, yeah, okay, you want to make that claim, let's let like what Heather McDonald did in that paragraph there. It's like, yeah, let's take it, let's keep running with your logic, let's see where that goes.
I'm gonna ask this guy to come on our podcast,
Yeah.
so I can yell at him. But and also, so here's what I like about this though, and we need more of this. So Jackson, he's the professor who ran the Shankarian studies. First of all, I'm on this guy's side, but like, you devote your whole life to some composer who, like, did you know? I mean, you probably knew this guy, right?
Yeah.
Shankar.
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was, and he dedicated his life to him. Interesting choice. It's not like Mozart or Beethoven or something. Right. But anyway, he's suing the school and a bunch of people for defamation who signed a letter against him. I don't know how far that one will go, but I do so I did look this up. That's why I got sidetracked before the show, because I was very excited when I said Jackson is in the process of suing the university and the Regents for Violence First Amendment rights. In that case, of course, they always try and file a motion to dismiss, and the judge denied it, which is good. Yeah. That means that it goes into discovery, which is when it's like the oh shit phase, because now the school knows it has to like pay a lot of lawyers and has to open their books, and has to actually engage in the lawsuit, which usually means they'll settle. So I mean, if I was this guy, I wouldn't want my position back. Like, fuck you. Like, you didn't come to my side. You took the side of literally a crazy person over me, but I hope he gets, remuneration for that. And like actually tell, like, if anything, just makes them, like, drags them through the mud, because this, like, you have to fight back. Like, if you don't fight back, this shit continues. And then, because like, I'm against a chilling effect in terms of speech, like in terms of there needs to be a chilling effect of
stupidity.
On stupidity, but there's always going to be stupid professors, like there just are. But the schools need to start standing up for reason and logic, and honestly, just for like academic freedom. Like, if you want, I don't think that professor should have a job. You will, like, he sounds like a total jackass. And someone who should not be taken seriously. But like, fine, academic freedom, but then other than Jackson gets his academic freedom also, and gets to ridicule and argue back, and not have to operate under the fear of losing his job. And
let him duke it out.
And yes, intellectually duke it out. And other schools then, like, why these lawsuits are important, because it's not just going to stay at North Texas. It'll spread to other schools, other professors, which this has happened. This is not like that's the first one. And other schools will say, okay, maybe we should actually stick up for this. And some have been, and it's been good. And actually, I follow FIRE, who's a great organization. And they always, like, they show a lot of this, and how if you fight back, schools back down, and they change their ways, and they apologize. And like, I know a professor, I don't know him, but I know the story where he was fired basically for being white. And because they were this was like height of the Great Awakening, where they're basically just like, well, we want a black woman to be in your position, or like a woman of color. And he sued them, and he won, and he got like a lot of money, maybe his job back. And so you have to fight back. Be very litigious. Like there are groups out there who can help you. And like, and especially if it's like, if you have the law on your side, the judge was like, this looks like clear First Amendment violation, which is a federal, like, this goes to the federal court, because it's a constitutional claim.
Fuck yeah.
Which is good. Federal judges, like, usually they're honestly tend to be more conservative. Not always, but they tend to be more conservative, and they don't fuck around with this stuff.
Well, good. I mean, in cases like this, I think it's better to stick, more closely to, like, the letter.
And I want to be clear, I don't always think that's a good thing that they tend to be more conservative. But in these cases, in these First Amendment cases, it's unfortunately that's how it's gone. Like, that's just like where it's become, honestly, more of a Republican conservative value, which is shocking. But
well, I think also part of, like, the conservative sort of I mean, maybe personality is to take things more literally than they should be. Not than they should be, but to take a more literal interpretation of certain things. So, like, when it comes to the First Amendment, it's like, I want someone to be taking the First Amendment super hyper literally. I don't want some creative dipshit like this fuckface, like, oh well, the white supremacy is tied to the First Amendment. So therefore, there are various. I want a postmodernist interpreting the First Amendment. So I want someone who's taking a hyper literal approach to it.
Yeah, man. The more I think about it, it's like, you see what goes on in other countries, and
Mm.
I'm not talking about Libya. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about Indonesia
Mm.
or even like Russia or Bolivia or like I'm talking about the UK,
Yeah.
Australia, France. Like
Canada.
they do not like the First Amendment is so important,
Yeah.
and we have to cherish it because it is like I think Macron in France is like suing, and like there are people in France, like protesters being charged with crimes for like telling Macron to go fuck himself or something,
Yeah.
or like having signs critical of him or stuff. Like, are you? This is the free world.
Yeah.
Like this is the free world, and people are being, the cops are coming to the homes of people in Scotland and England because of like jokes on Twitter or something.
Yeah, for posting dumb memes or whatever.
Like it is so crazy. Like we have to fight back against that
Yeah.
at every avenue, and sometimes that means defending people who you do not like, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Like it is so terrifying to me that we are headed the way of Canada and the UK and Australia, which like in some ways these are not free countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like freedom means a lot of different things, and I'm sorry, like if you don't have the right to speak and say it, unless you're like threatening someone or doxing them or harassing them, and that's even broad, but like you should be able to say jokes and use satire and even be vulgar and say things that are unpleasant and without the fear of having the cops knock on your door.
Yeah. Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
Yeah. It's what's his face? Andrew Doyle, the guy who created Titania McGrath. He's great.
I just listened to him on whose show was he on recently? Was it Bridget Fedesi?
Oh, probably. He's definitely been on a lot of those.
Yeah, I forget who's. Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah, he's great. I actually put one of his books on my list to read.
Yeah, he wrote a book on free speech.
I think I'm sure it's that one. Yeah, it actually is that one.
I know because he's also a comedian, and so he often hosts free speech comedy shows, and it's like when I hear that, it's like part of me kind of goes, but it's like, oh, but in the UK, it's like that's much more dangerous. Like that's much more courageous.
Yeah, it is more courageous, and it's like we've worked. I say we as in like our society, the comedians, the actors,
you mean
like,
the Reckless Muse?
The Reckless Muse, yes, the bastards. We have worked very hard to get where we are today with free speech, and it's like sometimes I think people like don't think of it that much, like it's that important until it affects you. Until your speech speech manifests in many different ways, until yours is restricted or God forbid like used against you in court, like you don't understand how important it is to our society.
Right.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's honestly a fear of mine because I think the younger generations polls show like they don't seem to care.
Right.
They don't care about privacy nearly as much. Then I think some of that's also education. Like maybe they don't understand. Like I'm sure a lot of the teachers are teaching like about hate speech and shit like that, which is protected speech, and they think that's what it means. And it's like, oh no, I'm against that. But it's like they don't go the next step. It's like, okay, who's defining hate speech, and what are the repercussions for that? And then what happened? It's like, oh, when you put it that way, so it's not like I've lost all faith, but it is concerning to me that more and more of the generation, like it feels like it's turning much more European and Canadian. And in some ways, I would like us to go more European, but this is not one of them.
Right. I've met, I know some more progressive-minded people who are kind of like, well, I think social media should crack down on conspiracy theorists, and they should say, I'm like, it's easy for you, and it's like even if I share your concern about these crazy nutcases. At the same time, like it's so easy for you to be like, yeah, I think that these people should be silenced because right now your side, the progressive side, is the one that has the most institutional power. What happens when it's flipped? What happens when you have a hardcore right wing government
and
they're cracking down on left wingers?
Well, first of all, I want to say that a lot of these conspiracies are fucking true.
Sure,
so it's like, and they were cracked down on, and then they turned out to be true.
Yeah,
and I was on the right side of those. I don't mean to my horn, but it's like, vaccines don't do what they say they do, or they're not going to have a vaccine passport, or it's like whatever it is. Hunter Biden laptop story, like it's all fucking true. So like, who says what's a conspiracy? Also, conspiracy just means two or more people like in connivance to commit a crime. Like that's not like it's turned into this like wacky thing where it means like, oh, you think aliens killed JFK? Like no, that's like there's and even dumb, like I don't know. I don't give a lot of credence to like 9/11 conspiracy or
Yeah.
something like that. But like, yeah, it should be out there. Like if people want to talk about it, then you mock it or you poke holes in it, and then people go like, oh, okay, or like flat earthers. Yeah, I think flat earthers should exist if they want to.
But my main point is like, it's easy for you to be like, yeah, we should crack down on the speech of people who are putting out ridiculous stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, but what happens when the other side is in charge and they're cracking down on the things that you think is crazy? Like, do you
and
want
that's what I was going to say. And you're right. But we're seeing that, Joe. We're seeing that now with Twitter, where Elon is now like they're not really silencing stuff, which is good, but they're like, what's he do? It's like the context or whatever. Yeah, the community notes, and it's like. And like they're seeing that and they're losing their minds because they don't have all the control. So it's not just government. Like, yes, the government, that's what ebbs and flows a lot more, but the social media, that has been overwhelmingly liberal and progressive the whole time. And so and that's what they always argue, like, oh, well, Facebook's not the government. Twitter's not the government. It's like, first of all, they work with the government. That's been proven with the Twitter files. And like, yes, when Twitter is having daily meetings with the FBI, like they're a government actor, like, and they're taking orders from the FBI and doing what the FBI says. That's a government actor. Second, and they're influencing elections by like not letting something be read on the New York Post. And second, it's like, okay, one, we want to foster a culture of free speech, and we should model it off of like these social media platforms are the new town square, and which is where free speech applies. Just like it's like the most like textbook example of where free speech applies. And you're right, it's not the government, but guess what? Now there is one of the big ones that you're not in control. Not that Elon's just like a Republican conservative, which he's not. Right. He might be going that way, but he's just not. But like, look what's happening. You guys are freaking out. Because you're getting a taste of your own medicine, and I kind of love it. I kind of love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Got a few more minutes. Did you ever find something kind of fun?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is the thing that you retweeted. This is from Siraj Hashmi.
Yeah, Siraj is great.
I love that guy. So it was two articles. It was screenshots of two articles that came out on the same day. So the first one says, this is from Yahoo AV Club. Beyonce drops surprise America Has a Problem remix with Kendrick Lamar. So she's complaining about America, right? The next article in the LA Times, and this came on the exact same day, May 19th. Jay-Z and Beyonce dropped $200 million on a Malibu mansion, setting a record in California.
Yeah, America's got a problem, all right.
Yeah.
That's the kind of shit, honestly, that makes me want to become a Marxist. Like, that's like, if anything is going to turn me into like a pike wielding, a fork, what's it called? Pitchfork wielding Jacobin is going to be shit like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, these ultra rich woke types are like bringing about that mentality, but like for reasons that don't benefit them. That's the thing. Like that, like it's like,
well, because they can't, like, Beyonce can't get on stage and just sing about how great her life is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She has to sing about like women being oppressed, and no, we actually run the world, and whatever the new race thing is, because if she just got up and talked about how her macchiato didn't come out the way she wanted, or how the breeze, there's been a land breeze, so she can't enjoy her Malibu beachfront as much because it's bringing all the bugs. Like, it's not going to resonate with people. But she starts talking about how America has like a race problem. Like, okay, she's still relevant, at least rhetorically.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's internet gold. It's all timer
on the same day. That's funny.
Yeah. I can't stand Beyonce. I like a couple of her songs, but I can't fucking stand her. She's so goddamn annoying with this shit.
She is. Yeah.
To just be rich and enjoy your life. Shut the fuck up. Like, you have nothing in common with the average person anymore. Like, go be rich.
What cracks me up is how much ideology has made me reverse a lot of my opinions on like celebrity behavior. So it's like, I talked about this when I went on Alex's podcast like last year, but we were talking about like a few years ago. I thought that the biggest problem of Hollywood was the lack of originality. Which like it's just so much mediocre garbage. But now it's like go back to just doing mediocre garbage and stop making condescending crap.
Yeah.
And the same thing with this sort of thing. It's like, I used to think, like these celebrities, when they get so rich that they become pieces of shit and they're so arrogant and they had this, these crazy lifestyles. But now that they become like, like these pontificating assholes, I'm like, no, just go back to being rich degenerates. Go back. I'd rather have that. Because at least I can understand that. If I became a millionaire very quickly and very young, I'd be a piece of shit too. So it's like, it's
the work, because it's not like they're giving up the wealth and the privilege at all. They want both sides. Like they want to stay relevant and be in the public discourse of whatever the issues are, while also owning a $200 million Malibu mansion, which is just one of her homes. Yeah. She bought one of the biggest homes in New Orleans too when I was living there. And I don't think I ever went. Like one of the biggest, nicest home. Like, so it's just like at that point, why not just like, do you need any more? Yeah. Like, can you not just have your concerts for free for people? Yeah. Well, like, would that kill you? Like maybe pay or enough to just cover the costs and basically be like a nonprofit. Like I'm not saying necessarily I have to lose money, but like, that's what, honestly, I think that's what I would do. If I had that kind of money, that you have $200 million to spend on a house. Yeah. You know how much money you must have if you have that to spend on a house? Yeah. That's more than like generations. That's more than probably many or the vast majority of generations of America have ever had ever. Right. Like starting from the Puritans. Yeah. If you took a Puritan family and brought them to 2023, that's probably more money than they've ever seen. Everyone in that family has ever had combined. Also, $200 million, like you couldn't just, I think the $100 million Malibu mansion is good enough for us, sweetie. Like, it makes me want to, I'm not going to say it because it would be taken as a threat. I was going to say like I don't even, like it just, and it's like, where's the eat the rich? Yeah. Where's the eat the rich for that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I understand eat the rich for like Jamie Dimon or, whatever execs, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, fine. Yeah. But like, where's the eat the rich for that shit? Yeah, yeah. $200 million in California. Like, what? Yeah. It's so sick. And then, you have the nerve to go say America has a problem. Well, that problem's not affecting you, honey. Right. Like you're doing pretty well. Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. God damn it. Yeah. Well, this is fun. This was fun. We had fun, Joe. Yeah. I hope you have a nice weekend. Doing anything fun? I'm probably going to goth night tomorrow night. There's some. Oh no! I'm sorry. It's another satanic ritual thing. This is the ones I've talked about before. It's Reverend Eater of Filth. Are you still doing research? Yes, I am. Dude, well, you just say you're into goth chicks. Like it's okay. I'm not really, actually. They're kind of gross, but actually, my coworker actually is doing a live painting, so I'll probably go support him. Love painting with children's blood. No, they're vegan, so that's true. At least they're vegan. God damn it! Again, same thing. Like, what happened to my Satanist like sacrificing children? Yeah, like, what happened to that? I'm gonna go to one of these with you sometime, and I'm gonna sneak a crucifix in and just start throwing holy water on it. Well, actually, Jim Clark told me, he goes, like you go to so many of these, like, you should start like doing like an expose on like modern Satanism or something. So that's actually not a bad idea. So maybe I'll find some modern Gatonism. Yeah. Do you think there's like more hardcore Satanists who are just like, what the fuck? I don't know. I want to see some Satanists from like Missouri. Yeah. Like actually, and they go to California and they're like, what are your pronouns? They're like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to sacrifice you. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny that, at this point, it's like, why even call yourself Satanist? Like, this is not like we're going to go out to the woods
on All Hallows Eve, and we're gonna sacrifice children to our unholy goat lord. This is just like political action. Like we're taking on injustice.
Ugh, it's the same thing. It's so boring. Be original. Satanists used to be original.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
my
funny. It's
god,
like
it's so
Google
lame.
agrees with you guys. Amazon agrees with you guys, and fucking the Democratic National Committee agrees with you guys. Like what?
You're
There's
not.
nothing
Yeah, you're not the
edgy.
counterculture anymore.
I know.
It's
so
edgy
funny.
if you like converted to Episcopalianism. Like
Yeah.
that would be edgy now.
Right. But anyway, it's fun to watch these weirdos.
All right,
And
keep doing
so
your research, Joe.
it's actually I've
Uh-huh.
gotten a lot. I mean, like the thing that cracks me up the most, and it's proven to be like the biggest source of inspiration for me from these things is it's like they keep claiming to be like, oh yeah, we're rejecting the conformity of Christianity, but it's like you guys are all doing the same thing. You're all like acting out the same things. You're all repeating the same thing. So it's like it's a really fascinating dynamic of like we're gonna replace conformity with our own individuality, but it's still just conformity though. So it's fascinating seeing that up close.
All right, I
Yeah.
guess.
I'll
Enjoy.
report back with some interesting
Report
stories.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, stay reckless, Benjamin.
Stay reckless, Joe. Fight the crits and Satanists.